With the Mutant Massacre over, the X-Men, New Mutants, and X-Factor have to recover as they experience some hefty roster changes and face threats even worse than before, both internal and external, all leading to the fall of the mutants, where all three teams will be put to the metal against their most brutal adversaries. As a brief recap, the Mutant Massacre saw the Morlocks slaughtered by the Marauders, with few survivors, although Callisto, the power-stopping leech, and the mutant finding Caliban number among them, and now reside with X-Factor. X-Factor's Angel also had his wings pierced and he'll die of infections if they aren't removed. The X-Men also suffered heavy losses, with Nightcrawler comatose, Colossus paralyzed, and Kitty stuck in a state of permanent phasing that will eventually kill her. This leaves the X-Men with a team of Storm, Wolverine, and Rogue, as well as newcomers Psylocke, Dazzler, and the lucky alien Longshot. Meanwhile, the New Mutants were taken to Limbo by Illyana to escape Warlock's murderous father Magus. And that's exactly where we're going to start in New Mutants number 47, which sees the New Mutants awaken Limbo and be greeted by Illyana's servant, Sim. Just as the New Mutants recover their wits, Magus attacks, having somehow made his way into Limbo. He begins to corrupt the place with his techno-organic transmode virus, so Illyana teleports everyone out, taking them to the ancient Scotland. They meet and help Scottish King Robert the Bruce before returning to Limbo, which Warlock confirmed is free of the transmode virus. Next issue suddenly opens in what is presumed to be the days of Future Past Future, or something similar, with the X-Men dead and Sentinels ruling. However, only Roberto, Amara, Rain, and Sean are there, and they are saved from Sentinels by older, harsher versions of Sam and Donnie. They rescue Layla, who has been using her teleporting powers to take mutants off-world, but figures it's only a matter of time before the Sentinels follow. Ultimately, the young New Mutants stay behind to be picked up by Illyana and prevent the desolate future. Next issue is a parallel to that one, where Doug, Warlock, Donnie, and Sam are in a future where mutants rule in the upper rich city, while normal people are abused in poverty in the lower city. The city is ruled by older versions of Roberto and Amara, who believe that they are doing what they have to do after mutants were nearly killed in the war. Ultimately, after helping some humans, the young New Mutants are captured. As for Illyana, she is fighting for her life in Limbo, where Sim is trying to take over by infecting everything with the transmode virus. Illyana's Soul Sword is able to stave it off, and she eventually stops Sim by leaving her darkest self, the Soul Sword, in Limbo, purging it of the virus and turning it into a paradise. She also sends herself to Professor Xavier and the Starjammers in space, and he helps her rescue the other New Mutants. They are then attacked by Magus, who is defeated when Warlock bonds with Doug to rewrite Magus's code and destroy him from the inside. With Magus defeated for good, Warlock and the New Mutants rejoice. Issue 51 sees Xavier go back through the New Mutants' memories to learn of what has happened on Earth, and really wants to go back. However, his telepathic abilities are also the only thing keeping the Starjammers from being blasted out of the sky by sheer destroyers. Illyana also doesn't want to reclaim her soul sword and become evil again, but Xavier makes John possess her and bring the New Mutants back to Earth to serve there while he serves the Starjammers. Plus, Magneto joins the Hellfire Club as the White King, making the X-Men and New Mutants some interesting friends. Issue 52 is a downtime issue where Magneto grounds the New Mutants for nearly getting themselves killed in the Mutant Massacre, then helps Illyana come to grips with her own dark side, encouraging her to keep fighting to be the best she can be. This is especially helpful as the Soul Sword can't seem to kill Sim for real, and he keeps returning, but Illyana swears to take him down her own way. I then want to take a little break from the New Mutants to check on the Uncanny X-Men in issue 215, which takes place right after the Mutant Massacre. Firstly, Cyclops' wife Madeline Pryor is nearly killed by the Marauders, who also kidnap her baby Nathan. Back with the X-Men, Storm sends Rogue, Dazzler, Longshot, Psylocke, and the Morlock leader Callisto to take the unstable Kitty Pryde, Nightcrawler, and Colossus, as well as the injured Morlocks, to Moira McTaggart's hospital on Muir Isle. Meanwhile, Storm and Wolverine check out the destroyed home of Jean Grey's sister, and when Wolverine catches a whiff of Jean's scent, he runs after her. Storm gets caught up in a human manhunt between three World War II veterans who hunt criminals for sport and their quarry, a rich drug dealer. Storm tries to save the drug dealer, but the dealer, one of the veterans, and two bystanders wind up dead, leaving Storm and Wolverine very disgruntled and scared of going down the same dark path. On Muir Isle, Rogue and the Junior X-Men are having trouble coming together as a team, so Dazzler heads off into town to have some fun and prove herself. She runs into Juggernaut, who totally does not want to fight her as he's not super evil and is a big fan of her music. She fights anyways and gets her butt kicked, nearly dying in the process. The rest of the X-Men get a chance to fight him when Juggernaut actually starts terrorizing the town and work together to get him arrested. Although, as it turns out, he was just a distraction so his partner Black Tom could rob a bank. But you win some, you lose some. Issue 219 is told through the eyes of an old X-Man ally, Havoc, Cyclops' brother. After returning from a trip to New York to find the X-Men, he keeps having nightmares of them trying to murder him. His girlfriend, Polaris, tries to comfort him, but Havoc decides to make a return trip alone. He's disgusted by the fact that the X-Men have allied themselves with the Hellfire Club, and is even more disgusted when he finds out that the X-Men are considering making themselves disappear to keep the Marauders off the tails of them and their friends. After a brief scuffle, Havoc decides to join the X-Men to do what he can, right as Polaris is possessed by the Marauder Malice, who feeds off her negative energy to take over her body. It's a stellar issue, the best one since the end of Secret Wars 2, although that isn't saying much. That's the last we'll see of the main X-Men book for a bit, but they've got a few more enemies to face. First is Horde, an Uncanny X-Men Annual number 11, who has unstoppable power and sends the X-Men into a citadel to get a magic crystal to remake the universe, lest he destroy Earth. As they go through the citadel, the X-Men succumb one by one to their heart's desires, being turned to statues or spirited away into the citadel. Only Wolverine makes it to the end, destroying the crystal and Horde in the process, saving all the X-Men. The fun thing about this issue is that many of Marvel's aliens have a gimmick where their race is at a genetic dead end and has stopped evolving, and this is explained as a punishment for reaching the crystal and failing to reject it, which is quite interesting. The X-Men then star in a pair of miniseries, the first of which is Fantastic Four vs. X-Men. This series sees Kitty Pryde nearly phased to death, so the X-Men go to Mr. Fantastic for help, but he refuses out of a doubt of his abilities, since he just learned he might have caused the Fantastic Four to get their powers on purpose. A few fights break out between the X-Men and Fantastic Four, so the X-Men turn to Dr. Doom while Kitty bonds with Franklin Richards, Mr. Fantastic's kid. Doom nearly heals Kitty, but his calculations have a fatal flaw, but Mr. Fantastic is able to overcome his doubts and save Kitty. Although the regenerative processes for her to dephase will take some time, but at least she's not slowly dying anymore. It's a pretty solid series with a focus on both the X-Men and Fantastic Four, although it's arguably more of a Fantastic Four story, but definitely a recommended read. After that, the X-Men participate in X-Men vs. Avengers, not to be confused with the Avengers vs. X-Men event from 2012. Part of Magneto's old asteroid base crashes to Earth, so he goes to retrieve it while the Avengers and Russia's Winter Guard try to capture him. The X-Men help out Magneto, but are highly suspicious of him. As it turns out, his helmet contains a device that lets him mind control anyone on the planet, which he's going to use to erase anti-mutant prejudice from existence. However, he decides not to, as Captain America claims that everyone should have the right to choose. He is then put on trial again, where he is deemed not guilty of crime since he's ruled as a state who hasn't signed the Geneva Conventions, but this only incites more anti-mutant riots, and then the series ends. It's an iffy one overall, and not nearly as good a read as a Fantastic Four mini. After that, we hop over to our third New Mutants annual, which sees the New Mutants crush teenage versions of the Avengers in a Danger Room session. After that, the shape-shifting Impossible Man from the god-awful 7th X-Men annual shows up and challenges Warlock to a duel. So the two go around the world fighting to see who is superior, followed by the New Mutants in their graduation costumes so they don't get further punished by Magneto if they are caught. Warlock and the Impossible Man shapeshift into various Marvel heroes and villains until Warlock changes color, something the Impossible Man can't do, earning Warlock the victory. It's a fun little annual and a definite improvement over the Impossible Man's last appearance. The New Mutants then find themselves involved in another challenge in New Mutants 53, which sees them attend a Hellfire Gala and butt heads with the Hellions. Roberto and Warlock get to miss out due to them having their own adventure, which we'll see later. But as it stands, the New Mutants and Hellions decide to see which team is better by finding out where a counterfeit statue came from. Truth be told, it's probably better Roberto isn't here because he definitely would have started a fight. Illyana spies on the Hellions from Limbo and learns it came from an island owned by Viper and Silver Samurai. So the New Mutants go beat up the henchmen. Unfortunately, the Hellions have already beat Viper and Silver Samurai, as they lead Illyana on intentionally, earning them the victory. Even worse for the New Mutants, Shawn decides to leave the team to search for her missing siblings, as they vanished during the Mutant Massacre, and she decides the others don't care enough to help. This two-parter is incredibly solid, providing some good banter both within and between the teams. The Hellions are always a joy whenever they show up, and are honestly characterized really well for a team of 7 villains. Issue 55 sees the team attend a party for the launch of Sam's girlfriend Lila Cheney's new album, and they get to beat up some guys who want to steal Lila's stuff. This is also the first issue written by Louise Simonson, and definitely serves to increase the focus on the girls and guys looking at other girls and guys at the party. This leads into Donnie, Illyana, and Amara talking about the guys they hung out with, and Donnie accidentally revealing that Amara's heart's desire is the evil manipulative Helliton empath. The New Mutants and Hellions that end up competing to rescue the strange bird boy that escaped from a government facility. And although the New Mutants take Bird Boy home, Amara leaves to join the Hellions, as their rich lifestyle suits her better. Truth be told, I think Simonson just wanted Amara gone, as her team's numbers continue to dwindle. The group spends issue 57 trying to interrogate the so-called Bird Boy into society, and Doug is having none of it, not even trying to understand Birdbrain. For the record, Birdbrain looks like a half-bird, half-human hybrid who can't really talk, and is obsessed with food. After some shenanigans, Doug finally tries to use his powers, and finds he can understand Birdbrain perfectly. He and Rain get particularly attached to their new friend, although Magneto doubly grounds them for all their stupid stuff they're doing, like bringing Birdbrain in. The scene where Magneto rejects Birdbrain is definitely meant to be a parallel to the scene where Xavier accepts Warlock, which is pretty neat. Birdbrain stays anyways, of course, but Magneto isn't happy about it. This brings us back to our last main series, X-Factor and X-Factor 12, where Beast and Iceman recruit the energetic wayward mutant Tabitha, also known as Boom Boom, back to the X-Factor complex for safety. Meanwhile, Jean is having no luck contacting her family, but Cyclops decides that it's finally time to contact his. Cyclops goes to Alaska to look for Madeline, but finds no record of her, as if she had never existed at all, driving Cyclops mad. As this happens, a master mold that was previously launched into the atmosphere crashes into a river and comes back to life. The Master Mold attacks Cyclops, deeming him one of 12 dangerous mutants, a plot that will definitely be picked up in a decade or so. But Cyclops destroys it. Meanwhile, Angel forcibly has his wings amputated so he can stand trial for his involvement with X-Factor. This causes Angel to freak out, and he decides to escape the hospital in his private jet. Cyclops returns just in time to watch Angel self-destruct the jet, seemingly killing himself. Issue 16 is then all about Skids and Rusty as they sort of hook up. Skids learns to put her shield down, and Rusty makes amends for his past misdeeds by attempting to help the girl he hurt with his powers. Clearly a follow-up to the suicide issue. X-Factor then goes on a little side mission in their second annual, where they get dragged to the Inhuman city of Adeland to rescue Franklin Richards. They have to stop an Inhuman villain Maximus, who is mind-controlling some of the Inhumans to be evil, and of course succeed. This probably makes sense with more Inhumans knowledge, but it's not terribly important to X-Factor. They just seem like they're there to finish the Inhumans plot. In issue 17 of their main book, X-Factor is called to California as the Exterminators to stop a mutant named Richter from destroying California, although something is up with Iceman's powers due to an adventure he had with Thor. Caliban also decides to join the team to use his mutant finding power to help out. As it turns out, Richter is simply being used by an organization called the Right to give mutants a bad name, so X-Factor trashes the Right and saves Richter, although Iceman ends up frozen solid. Artie, Skids, and Rusty then find out that X-Factor's PR guy, Cameron Hodge, is acting very suspicious, which lines up with a lot of his other previous activities. Beast, Iceman, and Caliban then go look for Tabitha, who has recently vanished with one of her old gang friends. Cyclops and Jean get into a fight about Cyclops believing Jean to be Phoenix, again, which again ends with him realizing that she's not. They really are just trying to get as much mileage out of this damn drama as possible, although at least this time he was manipulated by Cameron. Meanwhile, Apocalypse prepares his Horsemen of Death. Death isn't ready yet, though, and Apocalypse's other three horsemen, War, Famine, and Pestilence, have some god-awful teamwork, so Apocalypse sends them to fight X-Factor and learn their lesson. Even without teamwork, the horsemen do really well, with Pestilence making Beast extremely sick. Iceman is able to freeze the whole area to stop the horsemen, but also leaves Central Park covered in ice, making a bad public statement, especially after it's judged mutants by their deeds speech in California. Which is why, in issue 20, Rusty takes it upon himself to go clean up the mess, joined by Skids, Artie, and a reluctant Richter. They manage to get Richter to control his powers, and he and Rusty clean up all the ice, leaving a message the mutants were there, greatly cheering up Iceman and Beast, who are both in the infirmary. I'm still not a particularly big fan of X-Factor, but it's gotten better, especially with everyone finally talking about how utterly stupid their plan is, and that Hodge is giving mutants bad PR, and the trainees aren't terrible, which is nice. Now it's finally time to see where Roberto, Warlock, and Tabitha went in the Fallen Angels miniseries, written by Mary Jo Duffy and drawn by Kerry Gamble. During a game of soccer, Sam and Roberto collide, and Roberto nearly kills Sam when he breaks out his own powers in a very brief bout of anger. Ashamed, Roberto runs away, followed only by Warlock. Magneto had already called in Moira, Multiple Man, and the Supersonic Siren to help out with tensions, so Multiple Man and Siren go look for Roberto. The four end up joining a gang of misfits led by the teleporting mutant Vanisher and called the Fallen Angels. The gang includes Ariel, an alien who can use doors as wormholes and can easily convince people of things, Chance, a normal person, Gomi, a cybernetic telepath, and his pet cyborg lobsters Don and Bill, and X-Factor's Tabitha, who rejoins for the adventure. At Ariel's insistence, they also pick up Moonboy and Devil Dinosaur, two ancient mutants, as Ariel and Chance are secretly collecting mutants. People's powers start to go whack, either turning off or getting super strong. One of Multiple Man's duplicates wants to stay separate from the original, which is odd, and Devil Dinosaur accidentally kills Don by stepping on him. Everyone gets into a fight, so Ariel takes them to turn her home planet of Coconut Grove, which is in a constant party. Everyone seems happy for a bit until they are all captured by Unipar, the leader of the place. As it turns out, the people there are at an evolutionary standstill and want to experiment on mutants to restart the revolution. Plus, Ariel is also a mutant, being able to mind control people with her words, and Chance's mutant power has been causing the powers to go whack. Bill saves everyone, and Roberto convinces Unipar that Ariel proves that their race is not at a dead end, So everyone goes home and Roberto and Warlock decide to return to the New Mutants, which we'll see later. It's an alright series and is meant to be framed as Roberto deciding whether or not he is a good or evil, and seeing the supposedly criminal fallen angels acting as good people convinces him that even heroes can make mistakes sometimes. If you're not super into Roberto, you can probably skip the series, as it doesn't matter much in the grand scheme of things. This leads us back to X Factor 21, which sees X Factor fire Hodge from his PR position for being a jerk and not supporting X Factor's goal in helping mutants. Then, at the reading of Angel's will, it's revealed that Hodge will get all of Angel's money, although it is to be used on X Factor. Things get even worse when the right smiley bots, death machines with smiley faces, pose as mutants and attack the hearings. Although X Factor is able to fight them off with their powers, the reporter who has been hounding X Factor throughout the series, Trish Tilby, is injured in the attack right before the smiley bots leave. As X Factor make their way back to their HQ, smiley bots attack and take the kids and knock out Caliban. Fortunately, Tabitha has just returned from her adventures with the fallen angels and spots them, following them all the way to the right secret science facility. The right have power dampeners on all the kids and are torturing them to try and use their powers, as the right believes that mutants were created to be used as slaves by humans. Tabitha manages to break out Richter and escape, but they are eventually caught by the Right's leader, Cameron Hodge himself. That's right, Hodge has been behind the anti-mutant activity all along in order to further his anti-mutant agenda. Fortunately, X-Factor shows up with the help of Caliban, although he still feels useless in combat as he can only track mutants. X-Factor manages to free the kids and engage Hodge on the Smiley bots. Hodge has donned a ruby core suit to reflect Cyclops' eye beams, and even puts a dampening belt on Iceman to prevent him from using his powers. With Beast getting both stronger and dumber from Pestilence's touch, Jean is the only one operating at full blast. Fortunately, the power dampener inadvertently lets Iceman control his powers, as it wasn't calibrated for his amplified powers, and he manages to break Hodge's suit. Unfortunately, a clone was inside, meaning that Hodge is still out in the world, but the Right are defeated for the time being. Apocalypse has been monitoring the entire fight, noting that the Right and X Factor are serving his goals, then teleports X Factor, but not the kids, to his ship to test them. This brings us to X Factor's segment of Fall of the Mutants, starting in X Factor 24. Apocalypse explains that he wants to facilitate the conflict between humans and mutants to make mutants grow as strong as possible, so the strongest inherit the world, and asks X Factor to join him. X Factor refuses, of course, and they take down War, Famine, and Pestilence again. That is when Apocalypse unveils Death for the first time, a still-alive angel with metal wings. Death easily takes out X Factor, enabling Apocalypse to tie them up and make them reconsider as he sticks the Horsemen on Manhattan to do as much damage as possible. The only X Factor member remaining is Caliban, who opts to join Apocalypse in exchange for the power to fight back, pleasing Apocalypse. This brings us to the double-length X Factor 25, which sees Beast break the team out of their restraints by deactivating Iceman's power dampener, allowing him to break the bonds. Cyclops and Jean go fight the Horsemen in Manhattan, while Iceman and Beast fight Apocalypse. Cyclops and Jean get help from the Power Pack and manage to stop most of the Horsemen, but Apocalypse tricks Beast into causing Apocalypse's giant ship to fall into Manhattan. Jean manages to put it back on course with the help of the Power Pack, and they return to the battle inside the ship, followed by Death. Iceman tricks Death into thinking he killed Iceman by having him destroy a body double, causing Death to turn on Apocalypse. Apocalypse declares that everything is going according to his plan of making mutants stronger, then leaves with the other Horsemen. The ship crashes into the X-Factor complex, destroying it but injuring nobody. X-Factor greets the public, who assume that X-Factor caused the attack, but aren't sure. Cyclops manages to defuse the situation, and X-Factor leaves to help mitigate the damage. X-Factor finally reveals to the world the truth about their organization, meaning that they don't have to put up the stupid facade anymore, which is such a relief. After saving people for 3 days straight, X-Factor is pretty much held as hero, significantly reducing the anti-mutant sentiments among the populace. Angel leaves the team, but X-Factor seems stronger and better than ever. These last 2 arcs of X-Factor are the first ones I enjoyed, and they're actually super solid, especially Fall of the Mutants. From this starting point, I can see why Apocalypse is so popular, and you have no idea how excited I am that I don't need to deal with the stupid mutant hunter facade anymore. Hopefully the rest of the book goes smoothly from here. And now for the X-Men section of Fall of the Mutants. In Uncanny X-Men 220, Storm goes to meet Forge, the man who created the device that removed her powers, to see if he could undo it, but Forge is missing. Naze, Forge's mentor, reveals that Forge went insane working for the evil god the Adversary, so Storm teams up with Naze to kill Forge. The rest of the X-Men head to San Francisco in issues 221 and 222 to pick up Madeline Pryor, who gave them a call after waking up from her coma and who couldn't find Cyclops. We also meet the Marauders' leader, Mr. Sinister, who sends the Marauders to kill Madeline. Over the course of the 2 issues, the X-Men battle the Marauders to a standstill, forcing them to flee, although Havoc is distraught about the fact that Polaris has turned evil. While Storm and Naze push deeper into the mountains in order to find Forge's magic mountain Aerie, the old World War II heroes Storm fought, Crimson Commando, Super Saber, and Stonewall, are brought onto Freedom Force, and Madeline just has to stay with the X-Men for the time being. Freedom Force's precog destiny also foresees a future where all the X-Men die in Dallas, Texas. Mystique goes to warn Rogue, her adoptive daughter, but Rogue says that she has to stay with her team. Undeterred by Mystique's warning, the X-Men head to Dallas. Meanwhile, Storm finally confronts Forge, who is not working with the adversary but trying to stop him. Naze reveals himself to be possessed by the adversary, and Storm and Forge are flung into the void. This brings us to the meat of the crossover, which sees Freedom Force confront the X-Men in Dallas, Mystique intent on saving Rogue's life at any cost. Over on Muir Isle, Colossus has also recovered somewhat, and can now transform back into his human form, although with much effort. He gets a vision of the X-Men in trouble, so he calls Ileana and has her teleport him to Dallas, where he helps in the fight. The entire thing is being broadcast on television, even when a massive hole of light opens in the sky and starts blending time together. Psylocke reads Colossus' memories and sees that he has been contacted by Roma, a goddess of order that Psylocke recognizes from her time with Captain Britain. As it turns out, Roma is also the adversary's captive, as he sees everything as a game and her as an opponent. The X-Men and Freedom Force team up to save as many humans as possible as they can from the chaos, leading to some good publicity for the X-Men. Meanwhile, Storm and Forge find themselves in a pristine world devoid of humans, and give up the chance to populate it in order to stop the adversary, with Forge making a device to give Storm her powers back and send them to the real world, although they are immediately captured. The X-Men tell Freedom Force to take care of everyone while they go stop the adversary, which Mystique reluctantly agrees to. The X-Men go confront the adversary, and although they can't stop him, they manage to free Forge, who can close the portal the adversary came from by sacrificing the X-Men and Madeline prior to complete the spell. They agree, stealing the adversary away, killing the X-Men, and returning Dallas to normal. The X-Men get to publicly go out as heroes, but Romo offers them a chance at resurrection, which they take, letting the X-Men live on in secret, while the battle at Dallas becomes their legacy. It's a decent arc, although the lead-up isn't great. However, the Freedom Force battle is well done, as is the X-Men helping everyone. The conclusion also works out nicely, letting the X-Men sacrifice themselves while being rewarded for their continual efforts. For the final act of the Fall of the Mutants, we return to the New Mutants, starting in New Mutants 58, which sees Doug, Rain, Donnie, Ileana, and Sam continue to teach Birdbrain English and manners, as well as try to figure out where he came from. Birdbrain steals some food to bring back home, so the New Mutants follow. Issue 59 starts the real crossover, with the New Mutants running into some of Birdbrain's friends, which are all animal people. They are then all brought into a maze by the Animator, the creator of all the animal people, that animates in order to test them to see which ones are strong enough to live. Ultimately, all the New Mutants and Birdbrain are captured, with Ileana knocked out to prevent her teleporting. Meanwhile, Roberto and Warlock finally return home to find everyone gone, and after Magneto leaves to the Hellfire Club to try and use their machines to locate the New Mutants, Roberto and Warlock follow the maps the New Mutants left behind and head off. As it turns out, the Animator works for the right, and Hodge is on his way to make sure everything goes well. The New Mutants manage to break out, free the Animates, and seemingly defeat the Animator. But when they try to leave, they are attacked by Hodge's Smiley Bots. Roberto and Warlock arrive to help turn the tide, even further by the arrival of the Animates. Ileana even tries to get Magneto to help, but he's not at the mansion due to him going to the Hellfire Club. Hodge is killed when an octopus Animate sinks his ship, but that doesn't stop Doug from getting shot by the Animator while trying to save Rain. The New Mutants don't realize until too late that Doug is dead. Ileana banishes the Animator and Smiley Bots to Limbo, where they are all turned into food for Sim. The New Mutants leave Birdbrain behind to lead the Animates as they start to fight over who's responsible for Doug's death. Rain blames herself since Doug died protecting her, and Sam and Donnie blame themselves for not leading the team better. Oddly enough, Donnie's Valkyrie powers never kicked in to warn her of Doug's death, which makes it even worse, although it's never brought up. Roberto also blames himself since he sees reasons that if he didn't wander off with Warlock, Warlock would have been there to protect Doug. The New Mutants sadly return to the mansion, and when Magneto returns and finds Doug's corpse, he basically throws a fit and tries to wrap up all the New Mutants to keep them safe by preventing them from going outside, but they manage to convince him to let them down. Things only get worse when they watch the X-Men, including Colossus, die on TV, and Ileana goes berserk, trying to kill Magneto for failing both the New Mutants and X-Men, but she is calmed down by her friends. Ultimately, they decide that, with the X-Men dead, the world needs heroes, so they throw together some new costumes to keep on fighting. This is easily my favorite Fall of the Mutant storyline and the most impactful, as Doug's death is played really realistically, and it really feels like the whole team is going to destroy themselves from the inside from their grief. But they manage to band together stronger than ever, even if they have to spurn Magneto to do it. It manages to end hopefully while still feeling like the greatest fall, something that the other two threads lack. This whole Fall of the Mutants era is much stronger than the Mutant Massacre one, but is also a continuation of it in many ways. In X-Factor, Angel's injuries he sustained during the Mutant Massacre are what causes his transformation into Death, and even kick off the fight against Hodge. If he hadn't been hurt, the whole sequence of stories would have been very different. The X-Men were also crushed by the Mutant Massacre, losing half their team and replacing them with rookies that don't quite get along. They also spend the entire arc in terror and on the run, never being able to enjoy themselves or catch a break, all thanks to the Mutant Massacre. The New Mutant storyline really wasn't affected by the Massacre that much, aside from them kicking off the era in limbo. This era is almost their Mutant Massacre, actually, seeing them lose a third of their team. The crossover itself largely deals with the public perception of mutants, with it largely shifting from negative to positive by the end, thanks to the actions of both the X-Men and X-Factor, and with the New Mutants set to be the heroes for this new age. Despite every team going through their losses and hardships, this crossover is much closer to a rise of the mutants, especially compared to the Mutant Massacre and upcoming plotlines. In fact, I say the X-Men wholly benefit from this event, regaining Colossus, from getting her powers back, solidifying themselves as both heroes and a team, and getting to work in secret without fear of the Marauders. By the end of the fall, the mutants have come out on top. Let's see how long that lasts, though, when we come back next time for the rise of Excalibur and the culmination of events in Inferno. See you then.